What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. As always, I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help support the channel. With that being said, let's jump into a Thursday edition of Pistons Daily. So first things first, as always, our skill of the day. And today we're just going to talk about Isaiah Stewart's overall defensive impact. So last year, I think Isaiah Stewart's offensive production took a bit of a decline, as most of you may know. And he was designated to coming off of the bench and being the backup center to Jalen Duren. And I know, obviously, as an NBA player and as a player who wants to, provide as much value to his team as he possibly can, taking a backseat role for Isaiah Stewart was probably pretty difficult. It was probably pretty hard to kind of realize that he was going to be in a limited role compared to what he was his first few years in the league. But most players, I think, would get very discouraged. You'd see a decline in effort, teammate camaraderie. You'd see a decline in his overall impact on winning. But that was just not the case whatsoever with Isaiah Stewart. He thrived in his new role. He took it on the chin, and he embodied really being an undersized center that is going to bring maximum effort at all times. He's going to play lockdown defense. He's going to play like he's 7 foot while he sits at a 6'9" frame. He's going to run the floor hard in transition, and he's just going to do everything that contributes to winning and do everything that this coaching staff asks him to do. And that was just not evident in the box score and watching the games. But when you look at the advanced metrics, you can see how much better this Pistons team was defensively when he was on the floor. So let's take a look at some cleaning the glass stats here. When Stu was on the floor last year, the opposing team had a 4.9% less effective field goal percentage, which was in the 98th percentile for qualified big men. When Isaiah Stewart was on the floor, the opposing team shot 6.4% less from the rim, which was in the 95th percentile. The opposing teams shot 4.6% less from mid-range when Isaiah Stewart was on the floor, which was in the 92nd percentile amongst big men. And lastly, the opposing teams shot 1.8% less from three-point range, which was in the 79th percentile for big men. So just overall, the value that Isaiah Stewart brings on the floor defensively doesn't start and end at the rim. You're talking about a guy who affects the mid-range efficiency, who affects three-point efficiency, who just affects every single part of, defense in every single way. It's very impressive to see how he's able to operate when you're actually watching the game. And then you go back and you look at the advanced stats like I just did, and it really does put into perspective how valuable he is. And we're not just talking about a guy who is really good in transition defense or just a good rim protector overall, but in the half-court defense, he was unbelievable as well. Opposing teams scored 6.2 less points per 100 half-court plays when Isaiah Stewart was on the floor, which is in the 90th percentile for qualified big men. And again, Isaiah Stewart's impact on defense goes beyond just rim protection. I mean, he can impact the game at so many levels, whether it be just having active hands, his ability to switch onto guards in the pick and roll, and overall just the havoc that he creates on defense is so infectious, and it has such a positive impact on this team that I just love what he brings to the table. I know, he's making $15 million annually for a guy that really doesn't bring much to the table offensively. That seems like a lot of money. But again, what he can provide defensively is worth more than $15 million annually. He is going to be another very, very valuable and important piece of this team going forward. And I expect him to be a Piston for the foreseeable future just because his teammates love him, the coaching staff loves him, the front office loves him. He embodies the city of Detroit. And he's just a great overall player. We've talked about it before on here. He needs to kind of settle down a little bit and maybe take a couple deep breaths here and there. But I do love the energy. I love the aggression. And, he just needs to be able to bottle up that aggression and put it towards playing good defense instead of getting technical fouls and getting ejected from games. That will come with time. He's still a young player. He's still around 24 years old. It's only his fifth year in the league, and that'll come with time and the respect that he gains from the refs and the rest of the league. But I really do like the fact that he can come in, he can relieve Jalen Duren, and he can really just give you defensive ability that Jalen Duren doesn't. So it's a very good luxury to have. I don't know if there's a lot of backup centers in the league who are as good as Isaiah Stewart, specifically on the defensive end of the floor. So again, just a very good luxury to have, and hopefully the Pistons hang on to him for the foreseeable future. But let me know in the comments or over on Twitter if you think Isaiah Stewart can bring a similar defensive upside this year and continue to be a complementary piece next to Jalen Duren at that center position. Well, not next to Jalen Duren, but coming off of the bench for Jalen Duren, being a defensive stopper and continuing to complement Jalen Duren's game. But moving on, I wanted to talk about who on the Pistons I think is poised for a breakout year. And I know on this channel we've talked a ton about the young core, their development, and adding more skills to their bags is how this current team is going to progress positively. And I think that there's a lot of areas for growth, like we've mentioned, from all of these different players. And, when you look at the fact that the Pistons didn't make a ton of offseason moves, but again, rather focused on just development from within, amassing talent instead of acquiring talent, you can kind of see that the Pistons community expects to see improvement from every young piece because that's what the front office has harped on. They talked about it all offseason where they don't want to go make additions, but rather allow this young core to thrive together. And so now you have expectations where these attributes and these skills that we've been hearing about are going to actually be translatable to the court and into this season. And a lot of these areas of growth aren't going to be these unbelievable leaps. Like you're not going to see Ron Holland come out and average 26 and 9 like Cade Cunningham did last year. That's just not going to happen. But you can see substantial improvement in a lot of areas that could be considered a breakout. And that's just an example, a guy like Ron Holland. But when you're looking at this overall roster, somebody who I think can really break out this season, and we've talked about him a bunch, is Jaden Ivey. So last year, Jaden Ivey, we saw improvement from him from his third to his fourth year. And when you're looking at his three-point efficiency, it went from 33.6% to 40.9%. His overall field goal percentage increased from 43% to 46%. I just said that it was going into year 4. From year 2 to year 3 is what we're looking at here. He's headed into year 4 this year. I apologize for that. But nonetheless, he averaged a career high 17.6 points per game last year, and he did show that he can play off ball next to Cade Cunningham. And when you look at his overall off ball numbers, they were pretty remarkable. He was very, very, very good as an off ball guard. And obviously with Cade Cunningham and what he brings to the table, I think Jaden Ivey is most likely going to be a majority off-ball player for his career. Obviously, the Pistons want him to be more of a secondary creator as well, and that will come with time, but the off-ball numbers are there. And if you're just looking at the 26-game sample size that he had last year, 30-game sample size from last year, it's not a huge amount of games to really draw conclusions from. But if you look at his year this year, and he comes in and he plays 70 plus games, and he shoots around 38 to 39% from three, and gives you a larger sample size of that being realistic, then I think that gives you the confidence he can be the 2 guard next to Cade long term. And again, I know that comes with a lot of heartburn for people because he could very well come out and shoot 34% and revert to his old ways from 3-point range. But again, a 30-game sample size did give you a very good glimpse of what he can be, and I do think that 38 to 39% from 3-point range is very realistic. And again, there's other areas of the game he needs to work on. It's not just 3-point land that is going to really be indicative of how he can, progress as an offensive player. The rim efficiency has to improve. He was at 60% last year. In that mid-range, he was at 38%. So both of those need to improve, and there's a lot of areas for growth there. I would like to see that efficiency at the rim go up to around 65% at the minimum. And then when you're looking at his mid-range, I think 40% and above would be ideal. And I think that will come with him developing more of a floater game, him developing more of a start and stop ability because he is so unbelievably fast and quick. Sometimes he gets a little bit out of control. So when he's able to control that, I think all of those parts around the rim and in the mid-range where you do need to have very good footwork are going to start to come to fruition. Like we saw his three-point efficiency increase from year 2 to year 3. I expect the rim and the mid-range efficiency to increase from year 3 to year 4. And then another area of the game that if he were to improve on, he could be a candidate for a breakout year. That is the turnover percentage. He was at 16% last year, and I think that needs to decrease to around 12% at the minimum. For me to be confident in him being a secondary ball handler, a secondary creator next to Cade Cunningham, who himself is susceptible to turning the ball over. So having another guard like Jaden Ivey, who doesn't have as many turnover problems, is going to be important for this team going forward. And that's another area I'd like to see him improve on if he's going to really break into that star, that borderline all-star level that I think most of the Pistons fan base is expecting him to get there at some point in his career. And if it would happen this year, by all means, I would love that. But again, it's just going to have to come with reps, come with time next to Cade Cunningham. If we do get a 70-game sample size, we could see him at 20-plus points per game, shooting 47, 38, 80 splits or something along those lines, where you are creeping up on a 50-40. He's not going to be a 90% free throw shooter. His free throw isn't that great, but 80% is very realistic. So if you can get him around, like I said, 45 to 47% from the field, 38 to 39% from three, and around 80% from the free throw line, I think you're very, very happy. And I think that would be considered a true breakout year for Jaden Ivey. But let me know in the comments below if you think J.I. can truly break out this year and just what would need to happen in order for you to feel comfortable pairing him next to Cade as the Pistons backcourt of the future. But moving on, I wanted to give my Pistons all-time starting lineup. It is just the dog days of summer. There's nothing going on, and it has been very hard to think of content ideas, but I thought this would be kind of fun to dive into here on this Thursday episode of Pistons Daily. And I'm going to get some I'm going to get some grievances from people. I'm going to get some disagreements, and there's nothing really behind this. This is just a little bit of my opinion, and it's just my, based on overall skill, accolades, winning, and a little bit of my own bias just based on my Pistons fandom, who I've liked as players throughout my life, and who I like right now. So at point guard, we'll get right into it. No brainer here, Isaiah Thomas, one of the greatest point guards of all time, simply put. He led the Pistons to back-to-back titles in 89 and 90. He took down Michael Jordan multiple times, who is one of, if not the greatest basketball player of all time. And Isaiah Thomas was just simply a winner. He was a thorn in people's sides. And as of right now, I do think he's the greatest Piston of all time, and that's pretty non-negotiable. So, Zeke, welcome to the Kyle Garrison Pistons all-time starting lineup. You are the point guard of the future. And then at shooting guard, I think this is going to be a little bit controversial. I'm not really sure where the rest of the fan base stands on this, but I have Cade Cunningham at the 2 guard. He's one of the best pure guards in the NBA right now. He brings you value on both ends of the floor. He has size at that 2 guard position that I don't think somebody like Joe Dumars would bring to the table. And again, I understand Joe Dumars has that championship pedigree. He was an unbelievable player. He was great defensively as well. And I'm not taking anything away from what Joe Mars did in a Pistons uniform. But I think just Cade as a pure basketball player is better and will go down as a better Piston all time than Joe Dumars. And so that's why I have Cade at that 2, paired next to Isaiah Thomas, because, man, I think that backcourt would be exceptional to watch. They would be very, very exciting. And again, Joe Dumars is a very, very close second there. But as of right now, and after the year that Cade Cunningham just had, I couldn't leave him off of this top 5 or this starting lineup. I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest Piston of all time. Zeke is going to be somebody that he has to pass, and that's going to be very, very hard. But again, Cade is unbelievable. I think he's got MVP upside, and that's why I have him at that 2 guard. But again, don't come at me in the comments. If you think it's Joe Dumars, then by all means, you're entitled to your own opinion, and I think that's very fair. I have Joe Dumars as a close second there at that starting 2 guard position. I'd probably have him as my 6th man coming off of the bench, but I do think that Cade would fit better at that 2 guard position all time. And then at the 3, this one was tough, but I'd have to say Grant Hill. I think that would be pretty consensus as well. And I love Tayshaun Prince as a player. He was my first Piston I ever really remember watching, and I just loved what he brought defensively. But Grant Hill offensively, despite the injuries, was just unbelievable, and I do think he deserves that starting spot. I mean, he was really that 6'6" guy who can get to the cup, who can shoot the mid-range, can dribble the ball, can facilitate. Wasn't a great three-point shooter by any means, but was just a very, very solid small forward, and I think he would complement the skills of Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Thomas very, very well. And then at the 4 spot, I have Dennis Rodman. I know a lot of people would say Rasheed Wallace could deserve that spot just because offensively he was much better than Dennis Rodman. But for 2 straight seasons, Dennis Rodman averaged 18 rebounds a game, or over 18 rebounds a game for the Pistons. I mean, dude was just a menace. What he brought to the table rebounding, I can't in good conscience put Rasheed Wallace ahead of Dennis Rodman. So I will have Dennis at 4. But let me know if you guys agree with that one. That one is a little bit harder to do just because you're really comparing an offensive player to a defensive player and a rebounding player, especially with who I have at 5. Dennis Rodman might not make a bunch of sense, but again, it is Dennis Rodman overall. He's one of the greatest rebounders of all time. Got to have him in the list. And then at 5, to wrap up the list, I don't care about floor spacing whatsoever. I'm just doing best players right now, and that's Ben Wallace. I know Bob Lanier is a close second at that center position. I mean, he was great offensively. He was obviously a lot older of a player, but I mean, Ben Wallace was one of the greatest defensive players of all time. If he's not on that 04 team, who knows if they win it all. He was the defensive catalyst. He was the heart and soul of that team. And I don't think that you can really argue with the fact that he isn't the best Pistons center of all time. I know, again, Bob Lanier, great player overall, but I do think that Ben Wallace deserves that starting 5 spot. And then my honorable mentions that I thought could make the list but just didn't, were just, really close to making it but didn't quite make it. Chauncey Billups, Joe Dumars, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, and Bob Lanier, and Rasheed Wallace. I'll throw him in there as well. I think those 6 players that I mentioned could also be on this list. But again, the 5 players I listed, I do think are the 5 best players at their specific position. I know Cade Cunningham is a point guard, but if you're just looking at guards overall, if you're just pairing guards, wings, and bigs, then the 2 guards I think that the Pistons would put out on the floor if they could have an all-time team would be Isaiah Thomas and Cade Cunningham. But let me know in the comments or over on Twitter if you agree with my starting 5 or if you have a different one. Don't come at me too hard if you don't agree. This is all just opinion and speculation, and I just kind of thought it would be a fun segment to do during the slow days of summer. But let me know your guys' starting lineup, if it's similar to mine or completely different. But let me know in the comments section down below. And moving on, before we end the show here, I just quickly wanted to mention that Ron Harper Jr. has signed with the Boston Celtics. He did this a couple weeks ago, and I totally just blanked on this and forgot to give an official update. But if you are still wondering, Ron Harper Jr. signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Boston Celtics, and the Celtics don't have any two-way spots open, so he wasn't able to secure one of those. This doesn't really do much for me. I think a lot of you will agree with this. The Pistons had their guys they wanted on two ways, and they were able to retain them in Dennis Jenkins and Tolu Smith, and then they got Kobe Jones as well. So obviously they like Kobe Jones more than Ron Harper as that two-way wing. And again, Ron Harper was just unfortunately left out of the equation, but I hope he can go thrive in the G League in Maine, and hopefully he gets a chance for the Celtics in the near future on the 15-man. But again, Ron Harper Jr., thank you for your service. Good luck to you in Boston, and we wish you the best of luck. But that's all I've got for you guys today on a Thursday edition of Pistons Daily. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison 2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review and a follow if you can. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 49 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.